Thank you very much for all of you that you have come here. I know this was not easy. It's the election season. And मुझे पता है कि आप सब बड़े मसरूफ़ हैं. स्पेशल थैंक यू जी जो सियासतदान आए हैं. मुझे पता है उनके लिए तो ये बहुत ही मुश्किल था निकलना. तो आपके लिए ख़ास शुक्रिया. और हमारे जो मेज़बान हैं उनके भी ख़ास शुक्रिया आपका भी. और well, I wanted to first thank you for coming on to this very important event, because at this time we thought it was important to talk about this issue, because if we do not talk about it now, it would be too late. The plight of the Afghan refugees, it affects militancy and terrorism, as we know, on women, children and marginalized communities, especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And that is why we started to look at this issue, not just from today, but from 6 months before. So this is a culmination. The roundtable is a culmination of the reports that we have done from this area. We've done over 40 reports from the areas of Chaman, Quetta, the newly merged districts, Torkham border, Lahore, Karachi, Peshawar, DI Khan, Islamabad and Rawalpindi. And as a result of that, we have brought 2 documentaries before you. One is the Pakistan's migrant crisis, and the other one is the impact of the Taliban takeover in Kabul on the newly merged districts and the rest of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And we have not just examined these issues, we have documented their voices so that we can bring them to you. I would like that this roundtable, if we indulge not in just long, we don't want to have long speeches. What we want to do, and our aim, is to engage with you and to understand the issue. We are grateful that the politicians are here, and with their permission, I would like to present the issue to you first, and then look towards you to devise the policy, to tell us about the policy and how to move forward. I know some of you have been the victims of recent terror attacks, and we will get to that. And let me introduce first Ahmed Rashid to you. He is co-hosting this event with me. Some of you know him very well, किसी भी तारुफ के मोहताज नहीं है. But those of you who do not, he has written several books on Afghanistan and Central Asia. His most famous one was The Taliban and then Descent into Chaos. And I recently found out that he's also a poet. So I will hand over to him, because he's really the expert on this area and has been for many decades now. And he will give an overview of the issue, and then we can engage in our conversation. So over to you. And I would also like to, before I bring in Ahmed Rashid Saab, I would also like to thank the Canadian government for supporting this event and for supporting this project, because I felt that the mainstream media was not looking at this issue at all, and even the social media had by and large ignored the issue, because it's only mainstream politics that makes it to the media, whether it's social or electronic. And we are very happy that we could actually tell the story of women and children who have suffered the most when there has been terrorism in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And since I began my career from Afghanistan, I realize how intrinsically we are joined together at the hip, and whatever happens in Kabul has a deep impact across Pakistan. So over to Ahmed Rashid Saab.
Well, I too would like to thank, first of all, the Canadian ambassador for helping Voicepk produce this excellent documented evidence of the hardships being faced by the people, particularly the Afghan refugees and the Pakhtuns. So let me just start by saying that we are all well aware what is happening in Gaza, and the fact that a whole nation is being punished for carrying out so-called acts of terrorism. Unfortunately, we seem to be duplicating them. We have punished all the Afghan refugees collectively and condemned them as people who should be thrown out of Pakistan without any reason. And that is the essential problem today, that people's rights, people's human rights are not being respected, and we need to do that more than ever. than before. So I hope that this roundtable will help us produce human rights and a much greater awareness of human rights. I just want to say one thing about the Afghans and the Pakistan's own Pashtuns. There is at the moment, in my opinion, no two ways about it, that the Pashtuns have become the most imaginative, the most politically orientated, the most deeply involved in trying to find new ways to rescue Pakistan from the plight it's been in. And rather than welcoming this, what we have seen is the state is constantly pushing down those people who've raised so many new ideas. I've just been here a few hours this morning, and the ideas that I was bombarded with, you wouldn't find such a movement in Lahore or Karachi or anywhere else what you find today amongst the Pashtuns. And I think that is incredibly encouraging. And this is something that should be respected by the state and the government. In the meantime, I really welcome your initiative, and I think it's a great move forward, and I hope we can come to a common understanding of what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed Rashid Saab. And just right now, from the Pakistan Muslim League Noon, Senator Afnanullah has joined us. Thank you very much for joining us. Also, from the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, we have Mr. Waleed Iqbal. He's also a senator, so thank you very much for joining us. And before that, we also wanted to thank Sadia Basi Sahiba, from Pakistan Muslim League N. So we have all the political parties now, and just right now, Menaz Akbar Aziz Sahiba, also from the Pakistan Muslim League Noon, has just entered. So thank you very much for joining us. And now I would like to hand over to the High Commissioner, the Canadian High Commissioner, Leslie Scanlon, to say a few words, and then we can watch a short 10-minute documentary. I promise not to bore you, and move forward.
I'd like to start by thanking AGHS Legal Aid Cell for the invitation, and especially for the opportunity to speak about the migrant crisis in Pakistan. This year, we have partnered with AGHS Legal Aid Cell, which, through its digital platform, Voicepkdotnet, has worked on highlighting the human cost of the Taliban takeover Afghanistan and the resurgence of the militancy in Pakistan, particularly the cost of freedoms of women, girls, and minorities in KPK. Today's conference will be an opportunity for all of us to learn more about the work of the Legal Aid Cell, to learn about their findings, and to discuss a way forward to ensure respect for the human rights of all. Canada is proud to fund this initiative through the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives, the CFLI. This fund provides modest funding for small-scale, high-impact projects in more than 120 countries eligible for official development assistance, and is unique in that most projects are designed and implemented by small, local civil society organizations. We are thrilled to be able to work with AGHS Legal Aid Cell on this initiative, especially as the goal of the funding mechanism and a priority for Canada is to support and create a platform for local voices and discussions like today. Over the past 2 years, Canada has welcomed over 43,000 vulnerable Afghans globally, and more than 21,000 have traveled to Canada from Pakistan. And I want you to know that when I was in Canada in the fall, I actually went and visited with an Afghan refugee family, because we do a lot of work at the High Commission. All programs here in Pakistan from the Canadian government have a role to play on this program, but we don't often get a chance to see what happens at the other end. And this family was sponsored by a Canadian family, and the two daughters, 12 and 15 years old, will be going to school for the very first time, well, they are now, as of January the 1st, in school for the first time in their lives. As some of you will know, promoting gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls is a priority for Canada. We are also committed to supporting Afghan nationals to ensure they lead their lives with dignity and respect. We understand that the Taliban's takeover Afghanistan changed the condition of the country, and a humanitarian crisis ensued which impacted all people, especially women and girls. Their basic human rights were violated. Afghan women and girls were denied access to higher education, to public and political spaces, and to employment opportunities. And many of them, of course, as we know, had to leave the country. Despite mounting restrictions and intimidation, the women of Afghanistan have continued to support and contribute to their families and to their communities. Full respect for the human rights and fundamental freedoms of women and girls and their equal and meaningful participation in society are prerequisites for sustainable economic and political development. Canada remains committed to doing its part to address these challenges, working closely with local and international partners. And we continue to support gender-responsive principled humanitarian action based on critical needs to help save lives, alleviate suffering, and support the dignity of those affected by crisis. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your support and for your commitment to, especially to women's rights, and I know that has been the Canadian foreign policy for a very long time. I would also like to welcome here former Senator Faratullah Babar Saab, who is a veteran of the Pakistan People's Party, but also a noted human rights activist. I promise to keep my comments short, so I will now, we would like to start the documentary. It is only 10 minutes long, so we will show that to you. It's called the Pakistan's Migrant Crisis, and then move forward.
It's Pakistan government policies جو کہ ہم کو خاص پتہ نہیں ہے. What they want from refugees, from Afghan peoples, refugees, students, what they want, we don't know.
پاکستان میں تعلیم حاصل کرنے والا یہ نوجوان ان لاکھوں افغانوں میں سے ایک ہے جنہوں نے سوچا تھا کہ ان کو پاکستان میں ایک بہتر مستقبل مل جائے گا، لیکن پاکستان میں پیدا ہونے، پلنے بڑھنے اور کئی دہائیوں تک رہنے کے بعد ان کو یہ کہا جا رہا ہے کہ جس ملک کو وہ اپنا سمجھ بیٹھے تھے اس میں اب ان کی کوئی جگہ نہیں.
پاکستان گورنمنٹ یہ میرا حق بنتا ہے کہ وہ خود مجھے C9C پرووائڈ کرے، کیونکہ میرا پیدائش یہیں پہ ہوا ہے، میں نے ایجوکیشن یہاں سے حاصل کی ہے، میں نے سب کچھ یہیں پاکستان پہ کیا ہے.
جو بھی ہماری انفورسمنٹ ہوگی ہم اس انفورسمنٹ کے تحت ہم ان کو ڈیپورٹ کریں گے. 1 نومبر سے پہلے تک ان کے پاس ٹائم ہے کہ وہ یہاں سے چلے جائیں.
3 اکتوبر کو پاکستان کی نگراں حکومت نے اعلان کیا کہ تمام افغان پناہ گزین 1 ماہ کے اندر پاکستان چھوڑ دیں. ایسے میں یہاں بسنے والے ہزاروں افغان طلباء کے لیے بھی پاکستان کی زمین تنگ ہو گئی اور ان کے مستقبل کے خواب چکنا چور ہو گئے.
ہم نے بہت وقت یہاں گزارا ہے، جو 16 سال ہو گئے کہ ہم ادھر آئے ہیں. اچھا نہیں لگتا کہ ادھر سے جائے، کیونکہ یہاں پر بہت وقت گزارا ہے اور تعلیم کے لیے بھی زیادہ خفا ہے، کیونکہ وہاں عورتوں کے لیے تعلیم نہیں ہے. بس ادھر سیٹل ہو گئے تو اس لیے وہاں جانے بہت مشکل ہو رہا ہے.
سوال یہ ہے کہ حکومت پاکستان نے اچانک یہ فیصلہ کیوں لیا؟ افغانستان پر جب بھی برا وقت آیا وہاں کے باسیوں نے پاکستان کا رخ کیا. ایسا ماضی میں 4 مرتبہ ہو چکا ہے. 1979 میں سوویت یونین کی جنگ ہو یا 1996 میں طالبان کی پہلی حکومت کا قیام، 2001 میں امریکی جنگ کا آغاز ہو یا امریکی فوجی انخلاء کے بعد 2021 میں طالبان کا کابل پر قبضہ. حکومتی اعداد و شمار کے مطابق اس 44 سالہ عرصے میں 4 ملین سے زائد مہاجرین پاکستان میں پناہ لے چکے ہیں، جن میں سے 17 لاکھ غیر قانونی پناہ گزین شامل ہیں. حکومت پاکستان کا بظاہر یہی کہنا ہے کہ افغانستان میں جنگ کے خاتمے کے بعد پناہ گزینوں کے یہاں رہنے کا جواز نہیں، اس لیے ان کو واپس جانا چاہیے. لیکن ماہرین کی نظر میں اس اقدام کی اصل وجہ افغان طالبان پر دباؤ ڈالنا ہے، کیونکہ وہ سمجھتے ہیں کہ ملک میں بڑھتی دہشت گردی کی ذمہ دار TTP ہے، جس کو افغان طالبان کی سہولت کاری حاصل ہے. لیکن اس پالیسی کے اکثر متاثرین حکومت پاکستان کے اس موقف سے متفق نہیں.
پاکستان اتنا کمزور گورنمنٹ نہیں ہے جو یہ چیز ٹیکل نہ کر سکیں. یو نو، آئی نو، ایوری ون نو کہ کس نے لایا ہے، کس نے کھیلا اور کون بوک رہے. جب گورنمنٹ چاہیے ان کے لیے شاید یہ سیکنڈوں کا بات ہو، ख़त्म करने के लिए, लेकिन करना ही नहीं चाहते। शायद इसमें इनका खुद ذاتی مفاد ہوگا. خود تم نے بنایا ہے, آج تم خود کیوں شکایت کر رہے؟
یہ جو نان ڈاکیومنٹڈ افغان ریفیوجیز پاکستان میں رہے, یہ کوئی آسمان سے آ کے آیا؟ یہ تو بارڈر سے آیا. تو بارڈر مینجمنٹ سسٹم آپ کے کہاں تھے؟ آپ لوگوں کی کنسرن اتھارٹیز کہاں پہ تھے کہ یہ لوگ کہاں سے ہے, کون ہے؟ تو میں کہتا ہوں کہ جتنی بھی افغان ریفیوجیز پاکستان میں سٹے کرتے ہیں, لگ بھگ 14 لاکھ ہے, 13 لاکھ ہے, جو بھی UNHCR کی رپورٹ سے میں آپ کو بتا رہا ہوں. اگر 2% آف دیم یا 1% آف دیم اگر ان میں کوئی کسی کا ایسے وائلیشن کوئی ایکسپلائٹیشن کی طرف ان کی کوئی ایکٹیویٹیز ہیں, اس کا مطلب ہرگز نہیں ہے کہ پورا افغانستان کے لوگ جتنے بھی یہاں پہ رہ رہے وہ سارا ٹیررسٹ ہے.
افغان باشندوں کی ہراسگی کا یہ عالم ہے کہ اسکالرشپ پر تعلیم حاصل کرنے کے لیے اسٹوڈنٹس کو بھی محض نسلی بنیاد پر تعصب کا سامنا کرنا پڑا.
ڈپارٹمنٹ میں بہت اس طرح ایشو ہوتا ہے. ڈپارٹمنٹ لائک اکثر ان ڈیبیٹ سٹارٹ ہوتا ہے. ہمارا جو اسٹوڈنٹس ہے MBBS کا, اکثر ان کو یہ بتاتا ہے کہ بلڈی افغانیز, وائی آر یو کم ٹو پاکستان, اپنے ملک میں اسٹڈی کیوں نہیں کرتے ہیں. سو ڈس اپوائنٹڈ ویری. اس ٹائم ہمارا دل یہ کرتا ہے کہ یار بس ڈگری چھوڑ دو. وائی جسٹ وی؟ کیونکہ پاکستان میں اور بھی تو اسٹوڈنٹ ہیں فرام صومالیہ, نیپال, چائنا, کشمیر, تاجکستان, دبئی. یہ بیہیویئر ان کے ساتھ کیوں نہیں ہے؟ وائی از جسٹ افغانی؟ کیا افغانستان کا اتنا برا لوگ ہے کہ ہر کوئی ان کے ساتھ لڑنا چاہتا ہے؟
جب پاکستان نے یہ فیصلہ کر لیا کہ افغان مہاجرین کو یہاں نہیں رہنے دینا, تو پھر ریاستی جبر کے مختلف ہتھ کنڈے استعمال میں لائے گئے. رات گئے ان کے گھروں پر پولیس چھاپے مارتی. کئی مقامات پر غریب افغانوں کے گھروں پر بلڈوزر چلا دیا گیا اور کہا گیا کہ وہ اپنی عمر بھر کی کمائی چھوڑ کر صرف 50,000 روپے ساتھ لے جا سکتے ہیں. ایسے میں طلباء کی مشکلات بھی بڑھ گئیں. کسی کو یونیورسٹی میں نسلی امتیازی سلوک کا سامنا کرنا پڑا اور کسی کو سر چھپانے کے لیے کرائے کا مکان بھی نہیں ملا.
میں اپنی اگزامپل آپ کو دے رہا ہوں. میں نے لاہور میں میرا ویلڈ ریفیوجیز کارڈ ہے جو UNHCR ود کولیبریشن آف نادرا, پاکستانی نادرا, انہوں نے جو مجھے جو PR کارڈ دیا ہے اس پہ نہ مجھے ہاسٹل میں جگہ مل رہا ہے, نہ مجھے کوئی فلیٹ میں کوئی ایسے روم دے رہے رینٹ پہ. تو ڈیفینیٹلی یہ تو سارا ایشوز ہے.
ان سب مشکلات کے باوجود طالب علموں کی بڑی تعداد واپس افغانستان نہیں جانا چاہتی, چونکہ ایک طرف تو وہاں خواتین کی تعلیم پر پابندی ہے, تو دوسری طرف وہاں روزگار نہ ہونا بھی نوجوانوں کے لیے کسی عذاب سے کم نہیں.
عورتوں کے لیے اتنا سہولت, اتنی آزادی نہیں ہے جتنی ادھر ہے. وہاں پر عورتوں کو بس صرف گھر میں بٹھایا جاتا ہے, تعلیم کے لیے نہیں دیا. بہت ہمارے خاندان میں بہت ایسا ہے کہ تعلیم کی اجازت نہیں دیتے. وہاں پر تو عورتوں کے ایجوکیشن پر بہت برا اثر پڑا ہے, کیونکہ وہ عورتوں کو بس گھر میں بٹھا کر رکھنا چاہتے. عورتوں کو باہر جانے کی اجازت نہیں دیتے کہ وہ تعلیم حاصل کرے یا اپنے لیے کچھ کرے یا اپنے خاندان کے لیے کچھ کرے, اپنا نام بڑھائے. اس کے لیے وہ ان لوگوں کو اجازت نہیں دیتے. بس یہی کہتے ہیں کہ عورت گھر کے لیے گھر میں رہے, گھر بچے سنبھالے.
حسینہ ایک صحافی بننا چاہتی ہے جس کے لیے اسے ڈگری کی ضرورت ہے. فی الحال وہ اپنا شوق ایک ولاگ کے ذریعے پورا کر رہی ہے جسے وہ اپنے آفیشیل فیس بک پیج پر شیئر کرتی ہے. حسینہ ان طلباء میں سے ہے جو واپس نہیں جانا چاہتی اور حکومتی اعلان کے بعد بہت مایوس ہے.
مونږ چې دلته کنه پاکستان هم ډیر کور ودان وي, مطلب دلته مکتبونه اوس په افغانستان کې ویلي و نو پاتې به وو. دلته دا د مکتبونه مو فارغه سو. کله چې زه په 12 کې وم کنه نو همدا واضح شروع وي چې په افغانستان کې سیده نجونې تعلیم نشي کوي.
ان طلباء کے وہی خواب ہیں جو کسی بھی معاشرے میں ایک طالب علم کے ہوتے ہیں, یعنی ایک بہتر مستقبل. لیکن یہ خواب اب افغانستان میں پورے ہوتے نظر نہیں آتے.
ہم ایک ایسے فیملی سے تعلق رکھتے ہیں کہ مڈل کلاس فیملی ہے, अभी हम पाकिस्तान में फ़र्स्ट टाइम हम स्टडी करते हैं, सेकंड टाइम हम काम करते हैं, तो लाज़मी बात है अगर मैं अफ़गानिस्तान जाता हूँ तो मैं इस काबिल नहीं हूँगा कि मतलब मैं उधर जो है स्टडी को अपने स्टडीज़ को कंटिन्यू कर सकूँ। मेरे लिए बहुत सबसे बड़ा मसला अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट का होगा कि मतलब मुझे रोज़गार मिले, मतलब मैं फ़र्स्ट टाइम स्टडी कर सकूँ, सेकंड टाइम इधर काम वगैरह कर सकूँ ताकि मैं एजुकेशन को सपोर्ट कर सकूँ।
मैं बहुत खफा होंगी क्योंकि मेरे तालीम अधूरा छोड़ा है। मेरे बहुत से सपने हैं कि मैं उनको पूरा करूं। मेरी ख्वाहिश है कि मैं डॉक्टर बनूं और अपनी ख़ानदान के लिए बहुत कुछ करूं, अपने नाम बढ़ाऊं।
زه غواړم چې په جرنالیزم کې زه ډیګري ترلاسه کړم، اسناد ترلاسه کړم، ځکه چې یو ځای ځم په پوښتنه رانه وشي تاسو جرنالیست یې، تاسو اسناد لرئ، چې زه ورته وایم چې نه اسناد نشته، څومره و یا ډیګري نشته، څومره بل ډول خبره ده چې اسناد یا ډیګري وي دا خو ښه خبره وي، جرنالیست رقم ته وي.
पाकिस्तान में जन्म लेने वाले, यहीं पलने बढ़ने वाले किसी भी शख्स और रहीमुल्ला या सादुद्दीन में फ़र्क सिर्फ शनाख्ती कार्ड का है। कागज़ का ये एक टुकड़ा जिसके पास है इसका मुस्तकबिल महफूज है और जिसके पास नहीं इसके कल पर सवालिया निशान है। बज़ाहिर तालिबान की सोच से लड़ने वाले मुल्क का सुहेला और हसीना जैसी लड़कियों को तालिबान ही के नज़रिए की भेंट चढ़ा देना हर लिहाज से नाइंसाफ़ी है। एक वक्त था कि पाकिस्तान ने अज़म किया था कि हमें दुश्मन के बच्चों को पढ़ाना है, तो फिर मुहाजिरीन और इनके बच्चों से ये हक क्यों छीना जा रहा है? Thank you very much. We had documented a lot of women and children and minorities who are coming from Afghanistan. We've only shown you a few. And we also had another documentary, you can check it online, Voicepkdotnet, which is basically the impact of Talibanization on women, children and minorities, especially women in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. One woman who became a victim of mine bombs over there, landmine bombs, and another one who lost her son. The Taliban targeted that family, and in fact from that family is Ali Wazir, who's now a parliamentarian. Mohsin Dawer knows him very well. All of us know him very well. And also another woman who lost another son to the war on terror. So we have documented these stories and we brought them to you. You can have a look, and I'll now hand over to Mr. Ahmed Rashid so that we can speak a little bit about what has happened in these areas after the Taliban took over in Kabul and then move forward to the migrant crisis.
I think one part of this crisis with the Afghan refugees has been the lack of discussion in Pakistan. There has not been really an effective Pakistani lobby to argue either for or against this. It's been an order that has been delivered from up on high, and the political parties, the state, have had to go along with it, even though very reluctantly. However, there has been one voice amongst all the silence who has been persistently advocating the plight of the Afghan refugees and the need to accommodate them, and also condemning the militancy that we have seen in recent days in KP and Baluchistan and other areas. And that gentleman I'm asking to speak now, Afrasiab Khattar.
I think the Afghan refugee problem is as old as the Afghan war. And we know that Afghans did not start the war in 1980. It was the Soviet Union that sent its army in Afghanistan, and this is how the war started. And Afghan people had nothing to do with it. They had not attacked anyone, or they had not invited anyone for war. But in any case, the US and Western countries stood with the resistance, but unfortunately in the process they also tried to Vietnamize Afghanistan and to bleed it to defeat the Soviet Union, or to break the Soviet Union. They succeeded in that. But what was the cost for the Afghan people? That is a real question. I mean, for the last more than 4 decades, Afghans have been dominated by 3 Ds: death, destruction, and displacement. Afghan state has collapsed more than once, and Afghans are now without any state protection. So the tragedy of Afghans continue, and as we know, when they came in this country, initially they were welcomed, they were looked after, and they developed very good relation with the people of Pakistan. I think it's a very important thing to remember that the governments might have changed their policies or have adopted bad policies, but as far as the people were concerned, they remained good friends, on both sides, Pakistanis and Afghans. But unfortunately, there was no law for refugees. You see, Pakistan did not have any legislation on refugees. And Pakistan is also not signatory to international conventions, neither Geneva Convention 1951 or 1967 protocol. So I don't think it was an omission. I think it was state policy, and even the Western countries also did not raise any objection on this because they had to fight a war. And there's a very interesting book. I don't know if anyone of you have seen that book. Dr. Fazal Rahim Marwat, a former teacher in Peshawar University, wrote a book in 2005. It is titled From Mahajir to Mujahid. Mahajir is refugee, Mujahid is holy warriors. So these refugees were turned into holy warriors. And that's how things developed for decades. So they were dealt by expediencies of policies. I mean, if the government of Pakistan had good relations with an Afghan government, so refugees were all right, and there were organized efforts for repatriation. But if the relations were bad, the refugees were used as beads of pressure in Kabul, by sending them in a big way as they were sent recently. We are not against the repatriation. Of course, as we know, every big refugee problem has, a solution has three components. The first and foremost is repatriation, but repatriation has to be voluntary, dignified, according to international law. That's the first thing, and nobody would oppose that. But in that, there should be three parties: Pakistan, Afghanistan, UNHCR, international community. The second component of the solution is relocation. Those of the refugees who can't go back for any reason, they are to be relocated to a third country. And the third component is local absorption. In this case, Pakistan has been refusing any absorption. Although here we have a law in Pakistan according to which a good number of Afghan refugees are eligible to take Pakistani citizenship. But Pakistani government has been denying it. I mean, the previous Prime Minister Imran Khan had declared that the government will be giving them citizenship, but unfortunately it was not implemented. So the problem will not be solved without resorting to these three components and according to international law, humanitarian laws. But the recent move to throw them out was in violation of all international laws and humanitarian laws. As far as militancy is concerned, I don't think it is because of refugees. It's because of, as I said, big power games. When we speak about non-state actors, actually there are no non-state actors. Every non-state actor has got a state behind it. How can they operate in the way they have been operating? And I believe because in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa we are experiencing a new wave of terrorism. But I don't think it's because of the refugees. It's because a new Cold War has started. Previously it was the Soviet Union and the West. This time it's China, Russia, Iran on the one side, UK, US, and their allies on the other hand. So unfortunately, Afghans have a glorious history, but a very cruel geography. And they're victims of this strategic geography. So unfortunately, a new round is starting. And Pashtuns, as Ahmed was very kindly referring to them to be bright people, but unfortunately they have suffered a lot. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, when we say IDPs, this abbreviation, for us, it is not internally displaced persons. For us, it is intentionally displaced Pashtuns. As we have seen, 2 million Pashtuns were displaced from FATA.
Thank you very much, Mr. Afra Saab Khattak Saab, and we look towards our politicians for some kind of a roadmap forward of how to move around, how to move forward in this very volatile atmosphere in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And before we bring in our prominent politicians here, if they would allow me, I would like to also speak to the victims of terror who have really been at the brunt of this war. And I think over here there is also a politician, unfortunately, who was recently a victim of terror. And nobody has known terrorism like the way politicians in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa have. Mohsin Dawar Saab.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maniza, and thank you. First of all, once again, I would like to thank AGHS and Voicepkdotnet for organizing this event. And as Ahmad Rashid Saab said, that one thing which we lack in the issues related to Afghan immigrants is a lobby which talks about the Afghan immigrants. And this is very unfortunate that even if we take the Muslim Brotherhood as a parameter, or we take humanity as a parameter to talk about human rights issues, we have failed as a state, as different ethnicities living in this country, as a politicians, because we have witnessed that most of our politicians, or even the general public, is more concerned about Gaza, which is also a problem, and everybody should speak about it. But the level and the kind of silence which we have seen in the case of Afghan immigrants, it is, I would say, it is criminal. This current crisis is, it was a kind of red line or no-go area defined by the state of Pakistan. And even on a very small scale, if someone has organized an event, there was an attempt to stop. We had a conference which was, I think, organized by HRCP in the same hall, and I was told that what happened followed by that event. And we have seen an event organized in Black Hole, where Khattak Saab and some other guests were invited. That was also stopped. The recommendations of the parliament, they were also ignored many times, because I was chairing the Foreign Affairs Committee, and we recommended to sign the Refugee Convention. And I was also part of the Human Rights Committee, and we recommended a number of points for the federal government. One of which was to suspend the Foreigners Act for some time, and also to extend the deadline. And one of them was also to submit, work on the, give some legal protection to all the refugees. I submitted a bill in the National Assembly, and it was the first refugee bill which was tabled in the National Assembly of Pakistan. And I think, keeping in view the level of crisis of refugees in Pakistan, it should have been done earlier. But, I submitted a bill, and then I started to lobbying for that and started interacting with the different political parties. But the kind of response I was getting from different political parties, after that I decided with my other colleagues and friends and party members, we decided to not push it more, because we were worried that it's going to be defeated in the National Assembly. Most of the people who are against giving any kind of relief to the Afghan refugees, they are trying to connect it with the line order situation. Well, if we talk about the line order situation, it was said time and again, and we have been saying that, and it has been our opinion from a very long time that the groups operating within Pakistan, whether it is TTP or XYZ, they have been in alliance with the Amarat Islami and Haqqani network and XYZ, but still Pakistan as a state supported whatever happened in Afghanistan. They supported the Taliban's invasion, then the takeover of Afghanistan by Taliban, and we celebrated that takeover as a state. Our Prime Minister celebrated it, and the rest of the media, the way they were going to Afghanistan to celebrate these things. And at that time also we were saying that it will bring the impact to Pakistan also, and the law and order situation will get worse, but that nobody listened to us. And secondly, followed by, as Khatak Sahib said, that it is the continuation and the start of a new great game. And in the continuation of that, what happened in Afghanistan, without taking the parliament into confidence, without taking the political parties into confidence, they engaged in a talk with the Taliban, and under the umbrella of that talks, TTP they were given space, and the other militant groups, they were given space, and they spread across the Pakhtunkhwa and other areas of the country. And after that, we have seen 100%, more than 100% rise, which we were told in the last National Security meeting, that after the fall of Kabul, we have seen 100% rise in the terrorist activities. So there is no connection between the immigrants and the militants, because immigrants who coming after the 15 August, they are themselves the victims of the militancy. They are themselves the victims of Taliban regime.
Thank you very much. I just want to make one point, and that is, I don't know, many of you will not remember this, but the fact is there have been two return of refugees that took place before this latest one. The first was after the Soviet withdrawal in 1989, and that was an entirely peaceful rush of tens of thousands of Afghans who went home, hoping that the Mujahideen government would help develop the country. The second was after the defeat of the Taliban, when again there was an exodus. Now there were two factors that helped the exodus. One was the fact that the international community helped Pakistan through UNHCR and other organizations and NGOs to actually help the return of these refugees in the most peaceful manner possible. And this collaboration of the international community in Pakistan is entirely missing right now. It's nowhere in the picture. And we are not being asked to submit appeals. Now, I warrant you there's a huge refugee crisis in the world today, all over the place, but this is something that deserves attention.
Moving forward, I think one of the things that we have not looked at that deeply is the impact of the fall of Kabul on Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. We have Zigar Sher here. He's a barrister, he's an advocate of the High Court, and he defends people who have become victims of enforced disappearances. He represents them in court and also represents women who have faced violence. So I would like him to have a few words, give us a few words of how the impact has been of the fall of Kabul on Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
As I hail from Swat Valley, therefore I will restrict myself to that extent how Swat has been important in the context of militancy, insurgency, and movement of ill elements to Swat. SWAT history related to militancy in Afghanistan is very important since 1994, when a Malaccan agency was used to export people to Afghanistan in the name of jihad by Sufi Muhammad. Similarly, Bajor agency that borders with Afghanistan has always been an easy access for injecting people in and out, and has been used negatively to help all these militant allies to move them to and fro into Afghanistan. And again, all these areas, they were used as good shelters for those ill elements. The duration of militancy and internally displaced people of SWAT was a very short period, but its impact and effects and results are still very long lasting. Even as of today, many are missing, many were killed, many were left homeless, but all those losses could not give us any benefit. And again, while coming to Islamabad and speaking on such topics, we always wish to go back to our homes in our own cars instead of black Vigos. The cruel irony is that after the alleged successful operation against these insurgents, heads of political parties, local leaders, and elders of localities were targeted and killed in SWAT, either in bomb blast or target killings. And again, in the context of the upcoming general election, the legitimacy of this election, especially in SWAT and Malaccan agency, would be a big question when all these leaders, local leaders, political leaders were specifically, and they were picked and they were being killed. Again, coming to the Afghan and SWAT issue, it is very pertinent to mention that in Pakistan, in SWAT, we still have internment centers, and they exist as of today, and they are very much operational and are completely inaccessible to outsider, and nobody knows that what is going inside them, who runs them, who controls them, and who has access to information in those internment center. And it is very much plausible that they might be safe havens for breeding some lethal people and some more ill elements. We were very fortunate to have Malala emerging on the canvas of world stage, but thousands of such Malalas are still not spoken about, as they have been missing. Nobody knows about them, that what happened to them, and no information is available to us in any context. One important impact of this whole scenario is that two political parties, specifically I would mention one is NDM, the National Democratic Movement, and the other is PDM, Pushtun Tahaffuz Movement, who are specifically in Malaccan agency being sidelined, targeted, and barred, just because they speak of Afghans and Pashtuns very clearly, very loudly. We may look free from outside, but we are still under a very big unfelt siege. The Swat Valley, that was specifically known for its tourism, has lost it all, initially to militancy, later to floods, and now threats and fears.
We have Bakir Ahmed with us. He's the leader of the Afghan Hazara community. Would you like to say a few words?
1 नवंबर से शुरू होने वाले गिरफ्तारियों में हमने दस्तावेज़ात के साथ तारकीन वतन के साथ बेइज्जती और गैर कानूनी नकल व हरकत की वाक़यात देखी हैं, और तमाम हुकूमती इदारों ने तारकीन वतन के साथ सख्त सलूक पर तवज्जो दी। और कुछ पॉइंट जो यूनिसियार के हवाले से मैं इधर बता रहा हूँ, क्योंकि यूनिसियार का रोल बहुत ज़्यादा था, हुकूमत पाकिस्तान से भी, बाकी जो इदारा भी है। यूनिसियार तारकीन वतन को तहफ़्फ़ुज़ देने और ख़दमात फ़राहम करने में नाकाम रहा है, ख़ास तौर पर उन लोगों को जो अगस्त 2021 के बाद पाकिस्तान आई थी, اور اپنی انتظامی صلاحیت کی حد تک اپنی انتظامیہ کی وقار کو بحال کرنے میں ناکام رہا ہے. پناہ گزینوں کے لیے یونیسیار سے کوئی امید باقی نہیں تھی اور مہاجرین کو خود کو مکمل طور پر بے بس محسوس کر رہے تھے، جبکہ پاکستان میں مہاجرین کی مدد کرنے والی واحد ایجنسی اقوام متحدہ تھی اور یہ یونیسیار کا فرض تھا کہ وہ مہاجرین کی جانب سے بات چیت اور سمجھوتے کریں. دوسری طرف یونیسیار کو افغان مہاجرین کو پناہ دینے کے لیے پاکستان کے لیے عطیہ دہندگان سے مالی اور سیاسی مدد حاصل کرنے کے لیے ڈونر ممالک کے ساتھ بات چیت کرنی چاہیے تھی. بدقسمتی سے اس حوالے سے انہوں نے انتہائی کمزور اور غیر ذمہ دارانہ موقف اختیار کر رہا تھا. یونیسیار سے تارکین وطن کے لیے خدمات فراہم کرنے کے ہدف کی طرف قدم نہیں اٹھاتا ہے، بلکہ اپنی نااہلی کو چھپانے کے لیے چھوٹی اور بیکار منصوبوں کو عملی جامے پہنانے جیسی علامتی اور گمراہ کن سرگرمیوں میں مصروف ہے. یونیسیار اور تارکین وطن کے درمیان میں ایک ایسے ادارے کے طور پر گہرا تعلق نہیں ہے جو ایک دوسرے کے لیے ضروری ہے، اور تارکین وطن نہیں جانتے کہ ان کی قسمت اور مستقبل کیا ہوگا، اور یونیسیار واقعی یہ نہیں جانتا ہے کہ تارکین وطن کے لیے کیا کرنا ہے. یونیسیار کے معاملات کا سنجیدگی سے جائزہ لینے کے لیے انسانی حقوق کی تنظیموں کی طرف سے ایک غیر جانبدار مانیٹرنگ ٹیم اور ایک بین الاقوامی غیر جانبدار مانیٹرنگ ٹیم تشکیل دی جانی چاہیے، جس میں پناہ گزین برادری کی نمائندگی شامل ہوں، تاکہ پناہ گزین برادری، یونیسیار، ڈونر تنظیمیں اور حکومت پاکستان اس بات کو یقین بنائے یونیسیار کے کام کے عمل کی شفافیت. پچھلے 2 سالوں کے دوران ہم نے پناہ گزینوں کی جانب سے یونیسیار کے ساتھ ملاقاتیں کی اور ملاقاتوں کے نتائج اٹھائے گی مسائل، ان کی ماضی کی کارکردگی اور یونیسیار کے ماضی کی کام کا جائزے لینے کے لیے ایک علیحدہ میٹنگ کی ضرورت ہے، تاکہ آپ مہاجرین کے حوالے سے یونیسیار کے ماضی کے موقف سے بھی واقف رہیں.
UNHCR کے اسپوکس پرسن یہاں پہ موجود ہیں، ان کی جانب ہم جائیں گے، مگر بہت ہی مختصر اگر منیزہ کاکر صاحبہ یہاں پہ موجود ہیں، ایک ایکٹیوسٹ ہیں اور افغان ریفیوجیز کے حوالے سے کراچی میں انہوں نے بہت سارا کام کیا ہے.
افغان ریفیوجیز کے کیسز پہ میں جولائی 2022 سے کام کر رہی ہوں. مین اسٹریم میڈیا میں یہ مطلب ابھی آیا ہے، 1 سال تک مسلسل ایک سائلنٹ کریک ڈاؤن سندھ میں جاری تھا افغان ریفیوجیز کے خلاف، جو ایک زینوفوبک نیریٹو اسٹیٹ کی طرف سے افغان ریفیوجیز کے، اور وہ ہمیں سول سوسائٹی میں بھی وہاں پہ دیکھنے کو ملا اور جوڈیشل سسٹم میں بھی افغان مہاجرین کے حوالے سے ایک نفرت دیکھنے کو ملی. لیکن یہاں پہ اس کانفرنس کے تھرو میں مطلب آپ لوگوں کا توجہ جو جس موضوع کی طرف دلانا چاہتی ہوں کہ ریفیوجی لا کی ایبسنس کی وجہ سے جو مشکلات ہمیں کورٹس میں پیش آ رہی ہے، یا اگر ہم ماضی میں بھی دیکھیں، جس سر نے بتایا کہ یہ جو کریک ڈاؤن ہے یا ریپلیکیشن کا جو پروسیس ہے یہ پہلی بار نہیں ہے، پہلے بھی ہوئے ہیں. تو ماضی میں بھی جو حکومتیں آئی تھی انہوں نے اپنی انٹرسٹ کے مطابق افغان ریفیوجیز کو ایز اے پولیٹیکل فٹ بال کی طرح ڈیل کیا ہے اپنے انٹرسٹ کے اکارڈنگ. تو جب تک ریفیوجی لا ہمارے پاس نہیں ہوگا اس مسئلے کا حل نہیں نکالا جا سکتا ہے. ہمارا فوکس ریفیوجی لا پہ ہونا چاہیے. اور دوسری طرف UNHCR کی بات کی گئی میرے بھائی نے، شارپ جو ہے وہ ایک ٹوکن دے رہا ہے، وہ صرف ایڈ آف دا فیملی کو وہ ٹوکن دیتا ہے، باقی جو ہے وہ ڈیفینڈنٹس ہوتے ہیں. کل میں اسلام آباد پہنچی تو یہاں کی ایک فیملی نے مجھے اپروچ کیا جو یہ بتا رہے کہ کچھ کیسز 12 کا اور وہاں پہ 12 لوگ جو ہے وہ آج ڈپورٹ ہوئے ہیں. ان میں سے زیادہ تر جو لوگ تھے وہ شارپ کے جو ایڈ آف دا فیملی ان کو تو چھوڑ دیا تھا، لیکن جو ان کے ڈیفینڈنٹس تھے ان کو ڈپورٹ کر دیا گیا ہے.
Philippa Candler, thank you very much for joining us, and would you like to say a few words of the problems that people have been facing with UNHCR and SHARP?
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here this afternoon. I think a number of speakers have also also flagged some of the issues and challenges facing UNHCR. But maybe to come back on a few of the points that have been made and looking at it also from our perspective. We have, of course, a long history of collaborating with the government and the people of Pakistan in hosting Afghan refugees, and some of the speakers already alluded to the fact that the first wave of refugees came in the late 70s, and that there have in fact been consecutive repatriation movements back to Afghanistan over that time. I wasn't aware of the one in the 80s, but definitely in the early 2000s, over 1 million Afghans went back to Afghanistan, and since then there have also been voluntary repatriation movements. And of course, as UNHCR, we certainly stand ready to continue supporting voluntary repatriation movements, and have been doing so irrespective of the illegal foreigners repatriation plan announced by the government last October. And we've also been working very closely with the authorities here in Pakistan, as well as with many NGO partners, on providing support to host communities as well. In fact, in all, since 2003, UNHCR has contributed over 1.3 billion US dollars to the response to the Afghan refugees, with, of course, the support of our own donors. Having said that, of course, it is true that we recognize that we're at a moment in time here in Pakistan, but also globally, where there is a lot of frustration and disillusionment with looking for refugee solutions everywhere. We're seeing more and more refugee crises. We have, as we speak, over 110 million forcibly displaced people in the world. Afghans constitute roughly 5 million of those, and there are many competing demands on our own resources, as well as on the different host country resources. Having said that, I think nevertheless there is a willingness, and we hear this very often, to continue supporting the government of Pakistan in hosting Afghan refugees. As I said, it's been a long history of hosting refugees from Afghanistan here in Pakistan. I think it's something that the government and people of Pakistan can be very proud of. Many countries, as is often pointed out, do not have the same value and commitment and endurance in doing so. And we need to capitalize on that. From our point of view, what is needed to move forward on those issues, looking at the refugee response in Pakistan, is a clear government policy on what the government would like to see in terms of refugee protection. We have these different categories of refugees, the 1.3 million POR card holders, roughly 800,000 Afghan citizenship card holders, and the more recent arrivals that some of the other speakers have also alluded to. These people all need to have solutions thought through with regard to their particular situation. And for those who are undocumented, there needs to be some kind of process in place to ensure that people who need international protection, who can't go back to Afghanistan because they have protection needs and would face risks if they went back, are protected. I share some of the frustrations that have been raised by the representative of the Hazara community, because I think we have to recognize that as far as UNHCR is concerned, it has been very difficult for us to provide protection to the arrivals, to the people who came to Pakistan post-2021. A number of these people have approached UNHCR, and we have data on these people. That's about 470,000. I'm not saying that that's all the people who arrived after 2021, but how to protect these people, how to ensure that they're documented and that they are not harassed in the context of the repatriation plan is a challenge, I think, that faces us as UNHCR, but all of our partners who are also working in this area. We have a number of proposals that we have put on the cards for the consideration of the government of Pakistan, including possibly data sharing, in return for some kind of temporary protection given to these people so that they are not facing forced return at this time. We have talked about screening mechanisms. Other speakers have also talked about a refugee law, putting a refugee law in place, which of course is something that UNHCR has been pursuing for very many years, even preceding the current situation.
Are you not allowed to operate here directly? How is it that you operate through SHARP or through a local partner?
Thank you. No, we do both. So we do work through SHARP and other partners, but we also do engage ourselves directly. So we do have refugees, once they've been through SHARP, they are prioritized and they come to UNHCR for registration, and the data that we have of the 470,000 that I mentioned is data that UNHCR does have. One thing that we are not in a position to do since 2022 in Pakistan is to issue asylum seeker certificates to people who approach us. And this was a request of the government of Pakistan that we do not issue asylum seeker certificates to this population.
Let me bring in the policy makers now, and they have been very patiently listening to what we are saying. Let's find out what are the challenges. I know that Mohsin Dawar presented a refugee bill, which really got nowhere, but to Taj Haider Saab, who's a veteran politician, a senator, what are the challenges, Taj Haider Saab? Why does Pakistan not have a clear refugee policy? We keep congratulating ourselves that we've hosted so many Afghan refugees, yet we do not have a clear refugee policy. What's the problem?
Long years ago, I read a novel by Ernest Hemingway. The novel was A Farewell to Arms. I was a student then. And in the first scene, there is an injured soldier lying by the roadside, and a passerby stops and asks, what is wrong with you? And the soldier replies, the war. After 40 years of total destruction, and after losing hundreds of thousands of precious lives, we have yet to find out what is wrong with us. What do we do about it? That is the question. How do we go to that destination? First is that we shouldn't be proceeding unilaterally. And the use of force, whether inside a country or outside a country, has to be stopped. Let's not fear to negotiate. But let's not negotiate out of fear. Now, the only fear that we should have is that of going to war against one another. So, there can be bilateral approaches, talking to one another, two countries talking to one another, trying to find solutions. But it's very important that we have a multilateral approach also. If there is a problem between two countries, let us resolve that. Force shall not be used. We shall sit down and find a solution. Like the refugees are a problem of Pakistan. And if we seek a partial solution of pushing some refugees out, it will give rise to many other problems. वो जो फैज साहब ने कहा है ना, एक बखिया उधेड़ा एक सिया, यूं उम्र बसर कब होती है. So these piecemeal solutions are no substitute for a permanent solution. I think that all of us have suffered so much that the countries of this region sincerely want peace. The people of this region, they sincerely want peace. What has been spent on this war? A fraction of that, if it was spent on prosperity, on developing human resources, on developing the natural resources of this region, would have resulted in a very prosperous region with prosperity all around. While providing relief to those who are affected is important, and we should provide relief, but we should move with a lot of caution. And we should negotiate first and then take steps. No steps should be forced.
Thank you very much, Taj Saab, and I know that the Pakistan People's Party knows better than anybody else what it is to clean up the mess that the generals have created. However, we have to clean it up going forward. What you have suggested is that there has to be a holistic approach, that we cannot just have piecemeal solutions. And yet at the same time, there are detention centers where Afghans are held, Afghan refugees are held. They come out of a completely illegal process. At the same time, there are arbitrary decisions, there are forced repatriations. And therefore, I turn now to the PMLN. We have 3 representatives from the PMLN, and I'll get to each one of you quickly. And I know Afnan is a gentleman, Senator Afnan, and he would like the women to speak first. So I'll go to Senator Sadia Abbasi Saiba and ask her the same question, that what are the challenges for politicians to create a clear policy for Afghan migrants, and also not just for that, but to look at the effects of terrorism, the effects of how the fallout of Kabul on Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, how come the politicians have given very less time to this, whether it's in the National Assembly or it's in the Senate.
Thank you very much, Munize. I would like to thank all the speakers who spoke before me, and their views were very candid and very open. I don't think I can have the same candor, because I'm a part of a process in which I understand that in the politics of Pakistan, the political parties are the weakest link in the governance of the country. So where your role is limited, you have to speak with responsibility and caution. You can only say that policies should be across the board, policies should be transparent, and policies should be representative of the will of the people. That does not mean that that is the case. Now, the reality is that the narrative about the people of Afghanistan who came to Pakistan has never been driven by the political parties of Pakistan. That narrative has been created and is perpetuated by the security agencies of Pakistan. So it is not that this narrative is acceptable to us. What happened with the forced repatriation, recent forced repatriation of the Afghans, is a very, very sad episode in Pakistan's history of dealing with Afghanistan. Pakistan is a country that opened its borders when the war started there. It is a huge trauma, and it is a most sad episode. Recently in England, on sending migrants to Rwanda, the House of Lords decidedly rejected it. And they gave many, many reasons, but they said it's a violation of international human rights. And that is the main issue here. I am very, very saddened that the international agencies just did not intervene in this matter. It could have been handled diplomatically. It could have been handled in a better way. I'm grateful to Munize for raising this issue and agitating it. I think this is the first forum that in which we have all participated, and which we are saying that all this was wrong. In our speeches in the Senate, we did say that. We did say that this repatriation could have been done in a better way. And we cited examples of how people have been harassed and how their livelihoods have been taken away from them. I have met so many Afghans in Islamabad. There are so many of them. They're doing all sorts of businesses. I know them, and they have. When I go to them, they show me pictures of the plight of their families and those who have gone back. And and I feel embarrassed, and I feel ashamed that as Pakistanis we behaved like this, and as Muslims we behaved with our Muslim brethren in this manner. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for participating. And I know that in the Senate there is a Human Rights Committee headed by Mr. Waleed Iqbal from the PTI. But I'd like to first have the women first speak. That's the culture, at least in the Asma Jahangir Legal Aid Cell. I don't know about anywhere else, and I'm sure our gentlemen here will agree. So I'll come to you first.
I feel that this issue has two sides. ایک تو security side ہے اور ایک humanitarian side ہے, اور ہم ان دونوں کو mix کرتے ہیں. اور میں ایک اور side بتاؤں گی. I'll share another side which no one has talked about because I was part of the 1.5 track 1.5 ایک پروسیس تھا جس میں افغانستان سے پارلیمنٹیرین اور باقی لوگ آتے تھے اور ہمارے پارلیمنٹیرین اور باقی لوگ ہوتے تھے. تو وہ ایک ایسے لگتا تھا 3 یا 4 میٹنگز میں بیٹھی ایک ایسے لگتا تھا دیٹ اٹ از اے تھیٹر, بیکاز تھیٹر وڈ اسٹارٹ بائی دی افغان سائڈ تھمپنگ اینڈ پروٹیسٹنگ اینڈ ناک میں سے دھواں نکل رہا ہے کہ پاکستان از سو بیڈ. آپ نے یہ کیا, آپ نے اس وقت 10 سال پہلے آپ نے یہ بم دھماکہ کیا, 20 سال پہلے آپ نے یہ بم دھماکہ کیا. جب دوسرا دن آتا تھا تو آہستہ آہستہ مزاج تھوڑا ٹھنڈا ہونا شروع ہو جاتا تھا, دا ٹیمپریچر وڈ فال اینڈ دین دے وڈ سے یس وی نیڈ ٹو بی فرینڈس ود ایچ ادر. تو یہ سائیکل 4 میٹنگز میں گزرا. I was at education conference in in the US UNGA کی side meetings میں, and there was this Afghan youth from Harvard University, اور وہ پاکستان کو he was saying real bad things about Pakistan, that what Pakistan has done to Afghanistan. And I stood up and I said, but because not many of you know about it, that Pakistan has given approximately 4,000 higher education level scholarships to Afghan refugees. ہمارے بچوں کو اتنی اسکالرشپس نہیں ملی. بے شک وہ the money must have come from UNHCR or others, but it says government of Pakistan gave that. So it's a really, really mixed bag. But since we are going to talk about the current situation, تو current situation میں دیکھیے عمران خان صاحب نے 40,000 TTPs کو الاؤ کر لیا بغیر ہتھیار ڈالے ہوئے ادھر. پھر بارڈر کی سچویشن دیکھیں تو سمجھ ہی نہیں آتا, کیونکہ بارڈر سنبھلتا ہی نہیں ہے. ایک اسٹیمپ کرتے ہیں اور آ جاتے ہیں لوگ. جب طالبان نے ٹیک اوور کیا تو کتنے لوگ آ گئے, مگر اس کی وجہ سے پھر یہ ہوا کہ کتنے لوگ جو کہ پیدا بھی یہاں ہوئے تھے, جنہوں نے افغانستان کی شکل بھی نہیں دیکھی, ان کو نکال کے باہر. سو دا امیج دیٹ اسٹیز ود می از دیٹ کنجیشن ایٹ دا بارڈر, جب ان لوگوں کو زبردستی واپس بھیجا جا رہا تھا ایٹ دی آن سیٹ آف ونٹرس. رانگ. That is very wrong. So, and I think, Munize, I've mentioned it, that we didn't raise enough voices in the parliament. Maine ek dafa, there was a discussion on giving ID cards to the Afghan refugees. So I think we were in the opposition, PMLN was in the opposition, and I got up as a, private member. I got up and I said کہ ان کو I think ان کو ID card دے دینے چاہیے, because the humanitarian in me, I wasn't looking at the security situation, because this situation has many sides, was thinking کہ یہ بس بہت ہو گئی. And جو ہمارے بلوچستان کے تھے اختر مینگل صاحب, he said no, I mean like it was like what is she talking about. مطلب obviously so there are مطلب وہ ایتھنک کیا فیبرک بن جاتا ہے, پھر کیا چیزیں ہو جاتی ہیں, کس طریقے سے ہو جاتی ہیں. So I think what is required right now is to sit, first of all, the humanitarian, the security, the financial, and what is happening to women and girls, and inadvertently boys and young men. جو ہے, اور اگر آپ یہ دیکھیں کہ جو اس وقت ایجوکیشن وغیرہ اور جو گھروں میں عورتوں کو بٹھا دیا افغانستان میں, اگر وہ صرف فیمیل ہیڈڈ ہیں, ان کا تو کوئی مرد ہی کام کرنے والا نہیں ہے, تو وہ تو بھوکے مر رہے ہوں گے نا. سو آئی مین دیر آر سو مینی. اور ہم نے ایک اور میں بات بتانا چاہتی ہوں, کیونکہ میرا بیک گراؤنڈ ایجوکیشن میں کام کرنے کا ہے. 30 سال میں نے ایجوکیشن میں کام کیا بیفور آئی کیم ان ٹو پالیٹکس. 30 years I worked in education. Is that the parliamentarians who would come to the Pakistani meeting in track 1.5 were all educated in Pakistan. So the higher education, even they are in government schools, they were in private schools, they were in universities, they were in medical colleges, but unfortunately Pakistan does not have enough data on how we educated Afghanistan. And I am so sorry that the gates have been closed. I would really want that an education corridor is made, that Afghan girls, at least the girls can come and study in Pakistan. So it's a mixed bag, and we look at our seniors in the Senate, in the Parliament, and the at least the humanitarian side of the situation needs to be really discussed in the parliament and some decisions made. Thank you.
The fact is that education has been incredibly important to the Afghans, and they have benefited from it. Unfortunately, as you're saying, Pakistan had no concrete policy. Pakistan should have benefited it so that, in fact, in Afghanistan, when the war does end, or ended even during the Karzai period, there were so many Pakistani trained bureaucrats and officials in the Afghan government, and yet we took no advantage of it at all. We were pursuing a war policy with the Taliban. We wanted the Taliban back in Afghan government, and we lost out on that.
I think let's ask Senator Afnanullah, who is from the PMLN and is from Punjab. Well, I think the first question that you wanted to ask was...
What is the mood in Punjab towards the Afghan refugees? And the suspicion is that Punjab has been instrumental in driving out the refugees. Is that the case?
Ji, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Thank you very much. I feel that there's a bond that exists between the people of Pakistan and the people of Afghanistan. And that bond has a religious element, a demographic, and a geographic element attached to it. So people of Pakistan and, as you have asked, people of Punjab, they've welcomed Afghans after the Soviet invasion. They've welcomed Afghans after, post 9/11 as well. So the mood has been more or less the same. However, we have to see some things from a historical perspective. There have been a lot of talk about blaming Pakistan for what is happening in Afghanistan, and I don't personally feel that that is accurate. We have to understand two events in history to understand the situation that we are facing right now. And the first event was, of course, the invasion of Soviet Union, the invasion of Afghanistan by Soviet Union. That was something that was beyond Pakistan's control. That was not something that Pakistan initiated. However, we have paid a huge price for that war, from a financial perspective, from a social perspective, from a human perspective. And unfortunately, we were not given any credit for that. And the second event that I would like to highlight is, of course, 9/11. 9/11 was again something that Pakistan is not responsible for. The hijackers were not Pakistanis. Unfortunately, however, that the implication of that event, Pakistan paid dearly in terms of the human cost, the financial cost, the economic cost. So anyone who thinks that Pakistan has cashed in is hugely mistaken. We have paid the highest price for an unstable Afghanistan. We would want Pakistan to be stable. The speakers have mentioned the fact that the post-US pullout, the terrorist incidents in Pakistan have increased. But if you look at 2008 to 2015, there was an Afghan government which was not Taliban, and we had the highest numbers of attacks across Pakistan. We never mentioned that. I mean, who was responsible for that? And there is, I can refer to Afghan officials, senior Afghan officials, who have openly said that they want to destabilize Pakistan in the previous regime. They would want to destroy Pakistan. And I'm not talking about some bureaucrat or some guy who has little influence in Afghanistan. I'm talking about like people who have been the vice president of Afghanistan. You can go and look at his timeline on Twitter, and you can see the hate that we have faced from these kind of regimes and people. So I believe that the solution to the Afghan problem will come from within Afghanistan. Nobody can impose a solution on the Afghans. I mean, if you've known their history, and we would like to have a stable, peaceful, and a democratic Afghanistan where women are given equal rights, where there is children can go to school, And also a government that takes into account the religious and the traditional aspect of the Afghan society as well. So and we have also, there's one issue that has been dear to Pakistan, and that is of course that we don't want the Indian influence increasing in Afghanistan. I mean that is one of the reasons why Pakistan would eventually get involved, because we don't want to get encircled by India, and the Indians have been very successful in creating discord between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
One little question that I have for the High Commissioner here is that there is an impression in Pakistan that after the West left, especially when the Americans left, and I know you're representing Canada, of course, over here, but that we had to deal with the Afghan migrant crisis, and it was not fair for Pakistan. So how do you address that question?
Well, thank you for the tough question. Wasn't really what I was going to speak to, but Canada, like other donor nations, have been giving money through international organizations to support the refugee populations in countries like Pakistan. So I'm not going to speak to Pakistan bearing the brunt of having to support Afghans and other refugees, well, in this case, Afghans. But I did want to comment on the fact that there was a comment made earlier that the international community should have done more. And I did want to make a comment about what diplomacy is and how diplomacy works. You can make a decision as a foreign government to bring a hammer and start publicly criticizing, or you can use your leverage and shut down programs and do all those things if you want to. Or you can do behind closed doors, because you have to recognize that the law of the country that you're operating in is what dominates. So it is about Pakistani legislators, it is about the Pakistan government making a decision that was legal in Pakistan. So where do we come in as diplomats? Obviously, we were concerned about the human rights, not only of women and children, but about all of the Afghans that were forced over in a very short time frame. So our conversations were not, you can't do this, because in fact it's legal to expel illegal human beings in your country. That's legal. The problem is the way it was done on such a short time frame didn't give IOM, didn't give UNHCR, both of which are funded by Canada and many other donors, the time to set up properly on the other side of the border to receive. It didn't give people time to get their paperwork legalized in Pakistan. So of course the international community had issues, and of course we were engaging. But we can only engage in private with the government. We're not going to stand on a corner and use a bullhorn making comments that are not, we're trying to exercise influence where possible. So it's not just about managing a refugee or immigrant flow and getting Afghans to Canada. It's about making the case for human rights in Pakistan as well. And so I just didn't want to leave that hanging. And we obviously give money not only to IOM and UNHCR, but also we give money to Afghanistan to support refugee populations, as do so many other countries. So it's not like the international community is just sitting here going, oh, we don't care. That's not accurate, and it came up a little earlier from another speaker, and I did want to jump in and speak to that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for addressing that important question, and a rather hard one. But let me now come to Pakistan, and since we have Waleed Iqbal Saab representing the PTI, they were in government just very recently, and he heads the Human Rights Committee. I mean, the real question is that we still have a tripartite agreement with Afghanistan in the UNHCR. It was signed in the 1990s. Yet we still have forcible migration back to Afghanistan. We have detention centers where these Afghan migrants are held, and held in a very inhumane condition. We are being asked to come up with a clear migrant policy. I mean, all of this could have been done much better. How is the government of Pakistan going to deal with it, especially now that it doesn't recognize a government in Afghanistan or a government in Kabul?
Let me put it this way, had PTI been in government, we would never have seen pursuit of a forced repatriation policy of this kind that we have just witnessed. And I will make 5 points which will express our position. Firstly, I want to remind everybody here that it was the PTI government that organized and convened an extraordinary session of the OIC Council for Foreign Ministers on the humanitarian situation in Pakistan on the 19th of December 2021. And at that occasion, all present passed a resolution
and Afghanistan, in relevant part, in the context of this gathering that we have here, was remembered in these words in that resolution. We recall that millions of Afghan refugees are already residing in the neighboring countries and beyond due to the protracted conflict and ensuing economic and social challenges spanning over 40 years. We commend Pakistan and Iran's hospitality, guided by the Islamic virtues of generosity and compassion, in hosting millions of Afghan refugees for over 4 decades. We affirm the importance of sustained engagement of the international community with Afghanistan, especially in supporting humanitarian and development needs of the Afghan people. We decide that OIC will play a leading role in the delivery of humanitarian and development aid to the people of Afghanistan. This is the enabling environment that the PTI government created after the US exodus from Afghanistan in 2021 and the fall of Kabul. And not much later, in the dying days of our government, just before the regime change, which we believe plunged this country into chaos and unceasing chaos, and what then thereafter we believe became tyranny, and we see this policy which is a manifestation of that. On the 22nd and 23rd of March, there was yet another OIC summit convened under the PTI government's watch in Islamabad. And there, too, the subject was not Afghanistan, but the declaration was to the following effect: we affirm our abiding solidarity with the people of Afghanistan and express the confidence that the resilient Afghan people will continue to steer their country on the path to progress and prosperity. We underline the importance of full respect for the human rights of all Afghans, including women, children, and persons belonging to ethnic, religious, and cultural minorities. So that was the second point. On the 10th of November 2023, the PTI released the following statement. It said, we condemn the policy of inflicting collective punishment upon the entire refugee population in the country for the alleged crimes of a few. This is both disproportionate and unjustifiable. That's my third point. Fourthly, and most importantly, I would like to read out the statement that former Prime Minister Imran Khan issued from jail on the 7th of December, 2023. And what he said about the treatment meting out to Afghan refugees who are being forced out of Afghanistan. He said it in these words. He said, the way Afghan refugees, and this is coming from former Prime Minister, founding chairman of PTI, Mr. Imran Khan. The way Afghan refugees are being treated is against the religion of Islam, the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and our social values. The refugees who are deprived of their land as a result of wars and disasters should be treated well. It is our duty as a nation to take care of them with dignity and respect. 1.5 million refugees is not much of a burden on a nation of 250 million people. Most of the refugees who come to Pakistan seeking refuge / expulsion from their own land are the poorest of the poor. If the issue is not handled with civility, decency, and wisdom, negative feelings will arise in the entire Afghan nation. The resentment created as a result of this poor strategy will become a part of their psyche and the long-term relationship between the two countries. I fear, and this is Chairman Imran Khan saying, I fear a permanent rupture in our relations. Lastly, he said, the policy of treating the Afghan refugees like a herd of sheep should be abandoned. The entire policy should be formulated through planning and wisdom. The dignity and self-respect of the refugees should be considered. Fifthly and lastly, of course, my colleagues here on both houses of parliament have said that there were a lot of noises made in the Senate and in the National Assembly when this topic was raised, and unfortunately we are getting to see how sovereign our parliament is, and it is to be seen how sovereign the parliament that is to come into office possibly in the next few weeks, how sovereign that will be in making policy decisions for Pakistan. I have again today discussed the matter with the top leadership of the PTI. The way this matter has been handled is a complete travesty of justice. It is in violation of the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. It is in violation, we believe it is in violation of international treaties to which Pakistan is party, including the trilateral one that you have mentioned. But let me say in conclusion also that there are glimmers of hope. For example, since a lot of people from the legal community are sitting here, there is a well-known Raheel Azizi case which the Islamabad High Court decided, and the principle that was laid down there is that even if a person, there's a thin line between a refugee and an illegal alien. And the principle that was laid down in that judgment of the Islamabad High Court was that if a person has crossed the border illegally, but there is no intent, no criminal intent, and no intent to commit a crime on the soil of Pakistan, that person is entitled to refugee status, particularly if there is fear and apprehension of persecution if that person is to be sent back to the home country. And in this particular case, Raheel Azizi was a woman police officer. And when the Islamabad High Court released her, happily, the Australian government granted her humanitarian woman at risk visa.
Well, I think that one of the few questions that was raised and one of the suggestions that came from the policymakers, from Taj Haider Saab, from your own political party, Babar Saab, is that you need to look at the problem holistically. Perhaps there should be a conference between all countries where you can look at this issue and then decide on a way forward. My question really is that when you do not recognize the government formally, how is that possible? Also, Menaz Akbar Aziz Saiba spoke about opening, education links between Afghanistan and Pakistan, but at the moment, the borders remain closed even for trade. So what do you suggest is the way forward?
Thank you very much. First of all, I should like to compliment AGHS and the Canadian High Commission for arranging this dialogue on this very important issue. At a time when there is no discussion in the civil and the political parties of Pakistan on this issue, this kind of discussion really is very reassuring, and AGHS and the Canadian High Commission deserves to be complimented. I would like to place before you three things. Number one, the death, destruction, and displacement of the Afghan refugees is caused, in my view, by two fundamental reasons. One reason is that the state policies of still continuing the jihad project and the Brzezinski's formula of the strategic depth. So on the one hand, the jihad project continuation is responsible, and on the other hand, the total disconnect of the civil, political, and the parliament to even discuss this issue. These two, in my views, have contributed to the death, destruction, and displacement of the Afghan refugees. And I should also like to commend the previous governments, not only of Imran Khan, but also of Mian Nawaz Sharif. Senator Walid Iqbal has mentioned, and also Senator Abbasi Sahiba has mentioned. But I tell you that in February 2017, it was the PMLN government which which made orders, cabinet decided in February 2017 to make legislation for the Afghan refugees. And I was not in the PMLN, but when I met the Prime Minister, I congratulated him. And I said, I hope that you will be able to do it. And he retorted back in Punjabi, which gave me an indication that perhaps he was not very hopeful, although he had taken the initiative. Then comes the PTI government. Soon thereafter, after Nawaz Sharif did that, soon thereafter he was bogged down in the Panama case, and out he was. And the entire project collapsed. Then comes Mr. Imran Khan. And whatever Mr. Walid Iqbal has mentioned, he forgot to mention that even Imran Khan in Karachi publicly stated that the PTI government will give nationality to the Afghan refugees. It was a tall order, and we said it cannot be done, but still we welcomed it, and we said this is a very important announcement and it can open the doors for progressing forward. But then what happened? Even Mr. Imran Khan, at one point of time when the refugees converged on the border and they were not allowed to come in, Imran Khan made a public declaration that they must be allowed. The Prime Minister ordered, but they were not allowed. Then came, you might have heard the name of Ambassador Muhammad Sadiq. He was responsible. He was the point man of Pakistan with Afghanistan. And he made a public statement saying that the students will be allowed to come. The students also had converged on the border, but the security establishment of Pakistan did not permit even the students at that time. And a few months later, Ambassador Sadiq resigned. He did not say what was the reason, but I'm just saying you this. So the point I want to make is that since the policies are made by the security establishment without the input from the parliament and even the political parties, sorry to say that the political parties have not also taken it up as seriously as they should have. This, in my view, is the basic reason for the death, destruction, and displacement of Afghan refugees. We have, as this lady from Karachi mentioned earlier, she said we have made them a political football. So of course we have made. We invited the Afghan refugees. In the days of Ziaul Haq, we said they are the Muhajirs and we are the Ansars, and there is no need for any legislation. We said, well, they are our own brothers and they are most welcome. And we have a Citizenship Act which says that a person born in Pakistan will be given Pakistani nationality subject to some condition, but it is not being allowed in the case of Afghan refugees. We have made them really political football. We used them in the referendum of General Ziaul Haq. We didn't make legislation because it was our policy of the strategic depth that we wanted to keep them that way. The question sometimes that I have been asking as to why this sudden decision to expel them, I have been always wondering as to why. Some people thought that to put the Afghans under pressure. Some people thought that really there was a security threat to Pakistan. Probably both these might be true, but probably this might also be true that this sudden decision was taken to create a commotion in the country so that the elections could be postponed. It is possible. I have no evidence for that, but I suspect that one of the reasons at the back of the mind might have been, let this be, this can create the dynamics of its own, the refugees going back in millions, it will create the dynamics, and under the force of the dynamics, the elections can be postponed. And of course, it was also said the security threat, it was total nonsense. The security threat that the Taliban, these Muhajirs, the refugees, there were not militants among them. The militants we had defended and protected. Mullah Mansoor Akhtar, when he was killed by US drone, and Pakistani passport and national identity card were discovered from his person, who was keeping him? And Osama bin Laden, as Ahmad Rashid just pointed out. And all the big militants, whether it was Naik Muhammad, whether it was Baitullah Masood, whether it was Hakimullah Masood, whether it was Wali, anybody, they all were killed by drone strikes. Not one of them has been killed by Pakistan security agencies. That means we were running with the hare, hunting with the hound. We were nurturing the militants because we wanted to use the militants to project the state power beyond borders in according to our own skewed security and foreign policies. So having said that, what I would suggest, I would make a few recommendations and then you can also discuss on that. I think that The first thing is that the political parties in the parliament must seize it, try to take back the space. There must be more such discussions like this on the policies. Number two, we should have legislation for the Afghan refugees. This has been decided by the Cabinet of Pakistan in February 2017. And that cabinet decision has not been reversed by any subsequent cabinet, whether PTI government or whether the PDM government or whether now the caretaker government. That cabinet decision has not been reversed. And under the rules of business, a cabinet decision holds the field until it is formally reversed by a subsequent cabinet decision. So if that is there, and even if we don't ask to sign the 1951 Geneva Protocol agreements, even if we don't ask for that, because if you sign the 1951 Geneva Agreement, which is a good thing, but if for some reason they don't want to sign, the basic premise in the 1951 agreement is to make domestic legislation. Therefore, now you have February 2017 cabinet decision, therefore we should have legislation. There was also, in the time of PMLN government, among the cabinet decisions was, another decision was that the Foreigner Registration Act should not be invoked for the time being, so that they were not expelled immediately. I think that the Foreign Registration Act also needs to be revisited. And the revisitation that I have in mind is that we should add a clause into that, that subject to those who have applied for asylum or refugee status, usko nikal ke, I think that we can have the same law, Foreign Registration Act, with that provision. And if I recall correctly, in 2005, there was a move in the parliament to make that amendment. But some parliamentarians resisted. I think there needs to be a greater discussion on that. The third thing that I want to say is that there was a lot of discussion also, and this friend from Hazara, he criticized UNHCR and by implication also SHARP. Well, I think much more could have been done by UNHCR and also by the SHARP, but the fact is, and nobody talks of that, it is the government of Pakistan. It is the government of Pakistan which stopped the UNHCR from registering the refugees. It is not somebody else. So if the UNHCR has been stopped by the government of Pakistan, protocol and diplomacy doesn't permit that the UNHCR will say, no, I will go ahead. I wish the country director should have mentioned that it is the government of Pakistan which has stopped them. And if I don't know, but in talking with the SHARP people, I know one thing, that more than 400,000 applications are pending with them. They can't move because the government of Pakistan has stopped them. Therefore, I would say that, all right, if the government of Pakistan has some serious issues and they don't permit the UNHCR, they don't permit the SHARP by implication, then in that case, improve your own capacity to be able to register these people. If you don't have the capacity, then you have to trust the UNHCR in this. But they are not doing it. They will not improve their capacity. They will not permit because they don't want to do it. So that also is an important point I wanted to make. Finally, I should also like to say that we have to abandon the jihad project. I think that the jihadi project has still not been abandoned. And how it can be abandoned? The political parties, the civil society, the human rights organizations, the discussions like this, they must publicly state that we believe the jihadi project has not been abandoned, and we demand that the jihadi project must be abandoned. I think this also is very important. And one aspect that I should like to point out is that the manner in which we have pushed them out of Pakistan in this winter, starvation, no food, no clothing, what I think what is likely to happen is that the small children of Afghanistan might be tempted by the militant organizations, and some parents might even be forced to sell them. And it has happened in the past that Afghan children were sold by the parents, and they fell into the hands of militants and became finally suicide bombers. So if the government of Pakistan says that for the security reasons we are expelling them, on the other hand, what will happen is that you have created another security threat. And this point is not being discussed in as much detail as it needs to be discussed. That by throwing them out, you have not improved the security, you have undermined the national security of Pakistan. And this must be debated in the parliament. I hope that the elections are held freely and fairly on 8th February and the new government and the parliament comes into place. We must have a focused discussion on the threats to Pakistan's security as a result of this thoughtless expulsion of the Afghan refugees. And this is happening because all the state institutions have been controlled by the security establishment. Unless that, Pakistan has become a security-driven state. It is not a welfare-driven state and not a rights-based state. So we must always raise the voice that we must revert to the moorings of Pakistan in Article 38 of the Constitution, that Pakistan has to be a welfare-driven state, a rights-driven state, and not a security-driven state. I want to thank you very much. I hope there is a ray of hope. I think there is a ray of hope if the political parties and the parliament decide to play their role. There is a continuity. Whether it was the PMLN government or whether it was the PTI government, I think that they can't go back on that. It is already there on the record. So I think that with that thing that we have, we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Babar Saab, for that very comprehensive and very clear statements and a solution. I know you all have a lot of questions. Fatma Atif Saiba, I think you had a question.
جب بات ہوتی ہے لا میکنگ کی تو وہ لا میکنگ یا جو لیجسلیشن ہوگی وہ صرف افغان مہاجرین کے لیے نہیں ہوگی. اٹ ول بی فار آل دا ازائلم سیکرز اینڈ آل دا ریفیوجیز. تاور صاحب, ڈو یو ایگری؟ سو یہ پاکستان کی اپنی بہتری کے لیے ہے. پاکستان میں مسائل جنم نہ لیں جب ریفیوجیز یا ازائلم سیکرز پاکستان میں آئیں وداؤٹ اینی ڈسکریمنیشن کہ وہ افغانز ہے یا ان کا تعلق کسی بھی اور ملک سے ہے. ایک تو اس بات پہ اس لیے لیجسلیشن کو بہت زیادہ اپوز کرنا یا اس کے مخالف جانا میری تو سمجھ سے باہر ہے. باقی یہ ہے کہ جب تک پولیٹیکل ولنگنیس نہیں ہوگی اس مسئلے کو حل نہیں کیا جا سکتا.
فرزانہ علی آج ٹی وی کی پشاور کی بیورو چیف ہیں. شی از ون آف دا اونلی وومن بیورو چیفس ان خیبر پختونخوا ایٹ دا مومنٹ ریپرزینٹنگ اے ٹی وی اسٹیشن.
بہت شکریہ منیزے. سر نے فرض صاحب نے بات کی تو مجھے ایک دم سے 2008 کا کچا گڑی کا ایک منظر یاد آ گیا کہ میں ایک بچے کا انٹرویو کر رہی تھی. ہمارے ہاں بہت زیادہ ٹیررزم تھا, آپریشنز ہو رہے تھے, تو آئی ڈی پیز وہاں اور جلوزئی میں رکھے گئے تھے مختلف کیمپوں میں. تو بچے سے میں نے کہا کہ یہاں پہ اسکول بنائے گئے ہیں تو آپ وہاں جا کے پڑھائی کیوں نہیں کرتے ہو؟ تو اس نے کہا پڑھائی کروں گا لیکن یہاں نہیں, جب حالات ٹھیک ہو جائیں گے تو اپنے ہی اداروں میں جا کے کروں گا. میں نے ویسے ہی کہا جیسے عام طور پر پوچھا جاتا ہے کہ آپ بڑے ہو کے کیا بنو گے؟ تو انہوں نے کہا کہ میں پائلٹ بنوں گا. میں نے کہا اچھا زبردست, تم پائلٹ بنو گے, کس لیے؟ کہتے ہیں کہ جس طرح ہمارے گھروں پر بمباری کی گئی ہے اسی طرح سے میں بھی ان کے گھروں پر بمباری کرنا چاہتا ہوں. پھر 15 سال میرا خیال میں 1.5 ڈیکیڈ ہو گیا ہے اب اس بات کو. ابھی جب افغان مہاجرین واپس جا رہے تھے تو میں طورخم پر کوریج کر رہی تھی. وہاں پہ میں نے 3 نسلوں کو واپس جاتے ہوئے دیکھا. ایک بابا, ان کا بیٹا اور پھر اس کا بیٹا. تو جو نوجوان تھا درمیان والی نسل, وہ مجھ سے, میں جب اس سے ایز لائف کر رہی تھی اس کے ساتھ, تو اس نے مجھ سے کہا کہ میں یہاں پہ پیدا ہوا ہوں, میں نے آج تک افغانستان نہیں دیکھا, مجھے نہیں پتہ وہ کیسا ملک ہے, اور نہ میں جاننا چاہتا ہوں کیونکہ میں یہاں پیدا ہوا ہوں, میں پاکستان کا بچہ ہوں, اور یہ میرا بچہ یہ بھی یہاں پہ پیدا ہوا ہے आप हमें वहाँ किस लिए भेज रहे हैं? आपको पता है हम जब वहाँ जाएंगे तो क्या होगा? तो फरज साहब की बात सुनकर मुझे वो वक्त याद आ गया कि हाँ वाकई हमने वापस जिनको भेजा है, जो यहाँ के बच्चे थे, यहाँ पैदा हुए थे, अगरचे उन्हें लीगलाइज होना चाहिए था, अब कैसे होना चाहिए था ये हमने पॉलिसी नहीं बनाई, बहुत ज़्यादा इसके ऊपर बात हो गई। ये हमारी गलतियाँ हैं या हमने जानबूझ के ऐसे किया है, लेकिन मैंने अपनी आँखों से अपनी स्टोरियों में उनको, इन करैक्टर्स को, इन किरदारों को रिपोर्ट किया है। और स्पेशली जब हम ये इस प्रोजेक्ट के लिए काम कर रहे थे तो मैंने ऐसी अफ़गान बच्चियों को, लोगों को इंटरव्यू किया है, इन्होंने बात की कि हमने उन्हें दोबारा से मरने के लिए भेज दिया है। मैंने वाकई ऐसी ख़वातीन बच्चियों को इंटरव्यू किया है, ख़वातीन को, बच्चियों को, सिंगर्स को, ट्रांसजेंडर्स को। हमने बेतहाशा स्टोरियाँ की हैं, कभी जाके उस वेबसाइट को देखिए और जानिए कि हमने क्या किया है और हमसे क्या हो गया है एज ए कौम। उन्हें लीगलाइज होना चाहिए था लेकिन नहीं किया हमने, ये हमारी गलती है।
Thank you very much, Farzana Saiba. Or she has also contributed to the stories that we have done on Voicepkdotnet, and she's mentioned those.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate whatever has been said by the earlier speakers, and I think I will take advantage of presence of UNHCR here. They have already briefed everything and what is happening across Pakistan, and after regime change in Kabul, in Pakistan, we have registered more than 400,000 people in Pakistan. And as Her Excellency already mentioned that on 2nd February 2022, Government of Pakistan barred partners or UN agencies and everybody not to issue asylum certificates. Of course, UNHCR or any partner, if we are extending legal services or any services, we have to respect our law of the land. When government is not allowing us, it's not only related to refugees. Overall, if you look at the protection and protection environment in Pakistan, the civil society space has all been shrink. We don't have enough space to say or comment or for a political debate or anything. And I must appreciate UNHCR, international community, and of course IOM. They have added resources to counter all these things. And our teams has been all on their toes for a long time. And we have, SHAR being the national organization, facilitated over 5.5 million refugees in the last 24 years. We are not only working here in Pakistan, no, we have established office there in Kabul on the request of refugees. Of course, they have been here, and we are extending services on, we are focusing on cross-border interventions.
You have pending applications, and at the moment the registration has been suspended for
Suspended by the government of Pakistan. It's none of our fault or UNHCR fault.
Right.
We are advocating for their rights, and we are there, and our teams are there. How many people we have been released from the prisons and from the borders came.
Right.
And we didn't have any access to detention center. Our teams were going again and again. We were barred to visit these centers. Of course, it's a humanitarian crisis, and we should always, and this kind of forum has never been provided in last couple of months. We have tried so many times to organize such sessions with the deliberation with civil society, but there was no space available. And 3-4 times I was part of couple of events where we were told that the particular event is not happening. But I'm thankful for this forum, and of course the recommendations and the presence of dignitary is we have in this hall. We're gonna definitely look for the future recommendations and future solutions which are durable and respectable, and of course peaceful for Afghan refugees who are living here in Pakistan.
Last question, Zulkarnain Saab, you had one.
When refugees were sent, repatriation project were initiated. No one cares about person living with disabilities, and they were thrown on the mercy of harsh weather first. My suggestion or recommendation is only one way to solve all these issues we need to shift our focus from security to right-based.
Very quick comment from Bukhari Saiba and then moving forward.
The caretaker government has no authority, it has no domain to pass such order to deport Afghan refugees.
Good point.
Because the caretaker government is only to regulate the system till the final election.
Right.
And this order has ab initio is void order.
Professor AGHS Khan.
I guess I should be very quick and short, though I have a lot to say, but I know the time. So it has been repeatedly said asylum is a law, is a right under international law. And I want to assert that whether Pakistan or any state is party to the Refugee Convention or not, it's now part of international customary law. And asylum you cannot deny anyone. Pakistan is, I mean, then you can, the state can, through a judicial process, not administrative, review each case whether the asylum application is legitimate or not. No state can put a blanket no to considering any asylum application. So Pakistan is clearly in violation. Pakistan is in violation of his domestic law, like Babar Saab mentioned. It's all children born here have the right to nationality. It's not giving that. Politically, it's backfiring. It's not gaining anything. Even if it is illegal, it's bad. Okay, some realists would say that it's our interest. It is not in Pakistan's interest. Economically, they say they are a burden. Now, I'm not an economist, but some economist needs to calculate how much money is coming in their name. And that money, even if spent by an Afghan person, goes in shops in Pakistani shop. That circulates in Pakistani economy.
Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. I think this has been quite a brilliant session, and we have to thank Munize for organizing this. What I really appreciated was the format, the fact that we had stakeholders, intellectuals, women, people from all various NGOs, people from all walks of life. I hope that this can be repeated in the build-up to the elections. If we can bring people together to discuss political issues in a peaceful manner, that will be hugely beneficial to not only the issue of Afghan refugees, but also in the forthcoming elections. Thank you very much for spending all this time with us. We are very grateful indeed.
And I would just like to say that there is tea served for all of us, and I would like to thank over here the Voice PK team, especially Asra Haq, who painstakingly put this entire round table together, and Ahmed Said, Nida Ali, and Farzana Ali. I would also like to conclude by saying that what we have agreed on, which Faratullah Babar Saab proposed, that there is already a cabinet decision which is still there in 2017, February of 2017, that there should be a refugee law, that Pakistan must sign and ratify the 1951 Refugee Convention, and also that there is already a tripartite agreement with Afghanistan and the UNHCR, which was signed in the 1990s. From what we have seen of our own experience, we feel that the detention centers must be investigated because there is no moral and legal basis for their existence, and the people who are thrown into these detention centers are treated in very inhumane ways, that there are arrests and arbitrary detentions and harassment and physical abuse faced by Afghan refugees, especially by the police. There needs to be a stop on that. There should be a National Refugee Council. The next government should think about this. The next parliament should think about this. Instituted for refugees to articulate their concerns, and also that those Afghan refugees who have been born in Pakistan, they have the right to apply for through the Citizenship Act for citizenship. Thank you all for giving us so much time at a very crucial time in Pakistan, close to elections.
आपकी खबर, आपकी आवाज़, voicepkdotnet